What do I mean when I talk about elevated spirits? No, I do not mean that my spirits are better than yours, although I can see how some might draw that conclusion. Unfortunately, terms such as enlightened, high vibrational, elevated, and ascended spirits that are used to describe higher orders have been hijacked by the New Age community and used to describe energies that work with the elite or the chosen few, etc. Even within a Spiritismo community, the view on what constitutes an elevated spirit differ from tradition to tradition, usually with heavy racial and religious colonial overtones. So let's look at some ways that elevated spirits are viewed in these traditions. Now, in its most basic form, there is only God and the spirits of the dead. These are spirits of the dead that go through a process of evolution and progression with every incarnation, eventually evolving into what we would call elevated spirits, and then given the role to guide and help the living work towards their progression. Then comes the influence of Catholicism, Protestantism, the sciences of the Victorian age, and the esoteric and mystic practices of the East. We also see, in addition to God and the spirits of the dead, we see spirits of a higher order who were never incarnated, but born or created already in that elevated status, oftentimes given roles to assist in God's work, again, regarding the progression of his creation. Then, as spiritualism and spiritism moved around the world and combined with animism and the pantheistic practices of the global south, we see, in addition to gods, spirits of the dead, and these non-corporal high order spirits, spirits of nature. And this, my friends, is where the divide occurs in Espiritismo. The Espiritismo practiced by the upper class, non-melanated communities use the doctrines of Kardec and scientific spiritualism to justify their righteous stand that spirits of nature or pre-Christian religions are not elevated. Whereas Espiritismo practiced by the lower classes, the Jibaros and the people of color, either already saw their spirits as elevated due to their power and direct impact on their lives, or they just simply didn't adhere to the dualistic view of elevated versus non-elevated spirit, which is why we see such a dismissal of the spiritualist doctrines even till this day. The struggle is really real, y'all. So let's talk about how we can try and bridge this gap, okay? First, we need to decide whether or not you adhere to the law of progression, which inherently places us in a system of continuous growth and evolution, acknowledging but not vilifying our imperfection. And if you don't, then the rest of this video will mean nothing to you, and thanks for watching. Second, we need to define through our spiritual doctrines, whether they be your own personal gnosis or an already established religious tradition, what the basis is for progressing through this system. Is it based on morals, actions, intelligence, social status, occupation? In Espiritismo, for example, it is based on the progression of mind, emotions, and spirit through the virtues of faith, hope, and charity. Now it's time to address the perceived duality within this framework that seems to be the main obstacle for Espiritistas. For some, elevated and non-elevated spirits work just fine in their corpus, but for others, it might be more helpful to look at other options for the law of progression. One option could be is that it is a spectrum with elevated and non-elevated at two ends of the extreme. Another option would be not to look at the law of progression as linear, but as cyclic, even more so as a spiral. Now, when you look at it this way, there is no non-elevated spirits, only spirits on a continuous path of progression, essentially removing the duality from the equation. Look, I can go on and on and on forever and ever philosophizing and theorizing anything and everything that has to do with spiritualism, spiritism, espiritismo, mysticism, and esotericism. But the reality is that these are questions that you yourself have to ponder. These are questions that you need to bring to your altar. These are questions that allow you time to spend with these higher order spirits to answer for you. These are questions that you allow your higher self to answer for you. These are questions that you allow God to answer for you. And I would love to hear those answers. So do me a favor. Make sure you leave me a comment or send me a response video, because I want to hear more about how you view your spirits, how you organize your spirits, and how you interpret and understand the law of progression within your own framework. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name is Leilani. This is The Magical Solution, and this is how we grow.